But I guarantee you last night, as he trudged off the pitch, even though his England had won, Harry Maguire didn't have much to be happy about. So what about Harry Maguire? Seemingly out of favour, and yet still at Manchester United. Not playing much, but still at Manchester United. But in the England squad, and featuring for England. So last night, England were looking good at half-time. Of course, they were cruise control for England. So Southgate puts Maguire on, and then he scores an own goal. Thereafter, of course, the critics of Maguire were out in force. Gareth Southgate addressed this post-match, and he said, no, it's not on. It's not on what Maguire gets. And he didn't hold back.
From a Scotland fan's point of view, I get it, and I've absolutely no complaints with what they did. It's a consequence of ridiculous treatment of him for a long period of time, frankly. And I think our fans recognised, OK, there might be a bit of heat from our own supporters, but we're not going to have it from others getting into him. But it's a joke. I've never known a player treated the way he is, not by the Scottish fans, by our own, commentators, pundits, whatever it is. They've created something that's beyond anything I've ever seen. He's been an absolute stalwart for us in the second most successful England team for decades. He's been an absolutely key part of that. I've talked about the importance of our senior players. He's been crucial amongst that. Every time he goes on the field, the resilience he shows, the balls he shows is absolutely incredible. So, he's a top player, and we're all with him, and our fans were brilliant with him tonight.
So he's talking about pundits and commentators laying into Maguire. Simon, in your view, are pundits added to the fire here? Should they shoulder some of the blame?
I have to say I don't like what's going on with Maguire in terms of this scapegoating of him now. It's a terminology that was used inappropriately by Jadon Sancho, but is actually appropriate in this instance. There's one thing, this analysis, that people have issue about some of his performances and the fact that he's not playing regularly for his side. It's another thing turning it into a completely destructive mentality which has no benefit to anyone. I think some of it in part is to do with Southgate. I think there's a 50-50 split for some reason amongst English fans that are not having Southgate against those that are having. So the fact that Southgate keeps doubling down on picking a centre-back that some would say is not in form, some would say are not playing for Manchester United regularly, so he shouldn't be in the England side, some would say that he should change his circumstances, because if he really wants to change the direction of travel and people's perception, he needs to get out and play, and maybe he needs to sacrifice something, and that might well be his relationship with Manchester United and all that means, and maybe go to another football club where he dispels some of the mythology that's been built up around him, because he's not a bad player. I've been critical of him.
He's a good player.
I don't think he's a brilliant central defender. I don't think he's an £80 million central defender. I don't think he's been great in interviews. But I don't think he's a devil incarnate. I don't think he's one of the worst footballers to ever put a shirt on.
But you've also had a tilt at him.
I have, yeah.
Now, let me take you back to March. Harry Maguire, a mediocre centre-half who's being picked by a man who knows all about being a mediocre centre-half.
It's hardly...
Will again be on England's team sheet on Thursday.
That's not a go.
So,
it's hardly an avalanche.
But is that
it's hardly an avalanche
well,
of abuse.
I think it's a fair observation. I think he is a mediocre centre-half. I don't think he's an awful centre-half. I don't
famously said on this show he turns like an ocean liner.
I think that's a fair analysis at the time when in conjunction with the performances he was putting in at the time. He was poor. But to go on and turn it into a destructive, consistent ridiculing and parodying of the player, I'm not entirely sure why Gareth needed to address that yesterday, because the more you address it with a certain section of the audience that are not having Maguire, the more you're going to amplify it, because people are going to be defiant in their respect of what Gareth Southgate says, because they don't agree.
You could not address it, Simon, surely.
Well, you can. You can turn around and you can diminish the argument by not having it, by not giving it the credence. If you know what Harry Maguire represents and you're prepared to pick him, at the end of the day, dissenting voices and destructive voices in the background will only become louder and more vociferous the more you amplify it towards them, because there is an element of vitriol towards Southgate in that mix as well. Southgate doesn't come away from that. If there was a complete and utter buy-in to Southgate, then this would be less of an issue as well. So Southgate's part of this mix as well.
Yeah, well, I think there's a few factors here, and I actually thought Maguire did really well when he come on. There was nobody to give the ball away. The own goal was unlucky, could happen to anyone. There was no problem with his performance. I thought he dealt with it brilliantly, the stuff he was getting from the Scotland fans. But that's not really the big question here.
It's probably impossible to say an answer to this, but if he'd played from the start, would that own goal have happened?
Yeah. He's just in a position where he's trying to... The keeper doesn't shout. It's one of those things, Jim. Those type of own goals happen to everyone. But I don't mind, in a way, Gareth coming out and defending him a little bit. You could tell he was passionate. Whether it was right because it's going to create what Simon said or wrong, doesn't really matter. At least he showed some balls to come out and protect his player. So I think Maguire will appreciate that. And I don't think it's a bad thing.
And that's why he's done it.
And I don't think sometimes it's a bad thing for a manager to do that. From the whole barrage of stuff that's happened to Maguire from various angles, this started because United's own fans started booing the captain of their club. Now, I don't think that's ever going to end well for anybody. And they didn't, some of them, not all of them, of course, but some of them. And now, if your own fans are doing that, then it's going to spread, unfortunately. You're captain of one of the biggest clubs in the world. You are there to be shot at when you've been bought for the money you have. You're earning, £1 million a month. Social media has changed. Gareth can't live in the past and compare. Unfortunately, now, footballers, off the field and on the field, get more of a microscope on them than they ever have before because of social media and everybody talking. Every game, every performance, every pass, every mistake, everything. So, I remember...
But he's talking about pundits.
I'm going to get to that.
He's landed it at the pundits.
I know,
and I don't understand
I'm telling
where
you...
he's going with it.
We haven't seen any evidence of that.
Well, my opinion is that the majority of stuff that Harry has had to deal with has come from the supporters of clubs. Not so much pundits and commentators, because I don't remember, like you two are just alluding to, somebody personally going for him and saying he's a crap player, because he's not. He's a good player. And he's played bloody well for England.
It's mediocre, harsh, albeit back in March.
I don't know when the timing was, but at the timing, probably fair. Because his performances, and this is the other bit I've got to get to, Harry Maguire has dropped from his high level, especially for Man United, and dropped. And it became obvious. He was struggling. Whether it's confident, anyone's allowed to struggle and play badly. It just happened he was doing it in a Man United side that's worldwide, watched every game from all over the planet, and also in a team that was struggling. And he's captain for Man United. And do you know what the great thing about Maguire is? He never moans. You never see him moaning in the press. You never see him doing articles. Yeah, it might be affecting him, but he shows up. Every single time he shows up. Great resilience. And that's because he understands it. He gets it. It's just he'll get through it, but he does need to move and start playing somewhere else and
rebuild. But do
rebuild.
you think it is affecting him now, Dan?
A little
is that
bit.
Why Southgate spoke post-match about him?
It can't not affect you in some form, but it's how big that is.
Well, if you're building a team and a team spirit and you're seeing one player being singled out and then you're seeing the opposition, being able to piggyback off the back of it and the opposition support being able to parody the player, you're smashing the Scots to oblivion and all they can do is take the mickey out of the central defender. That's their opportunity.
I think Gareth should have thought last night through better. I don't think he should have put him on.
So,
he played him on the weekend. He played well.
Then what does that tell you? Because ultimately, then Southgate
it tells you nothing, because we won't be talking about it now, because he played on Saturday. You just rested him last night. You're playing a friendly you're playing a friendly side against Scotland. Cruising.
The next time, they didn't boo him. It wasn't the ridicule because of their own goal. That's just, why does it have to be Harry Maguire? People, that would be the reaction. My reaction when he conceded the own goal was not that it was Harry Maguire's fault. It was, why does it have to be him? Because here it comes, right? And I have called him a mediocre centre half, and I will stand by that principle because I think there are better centre halves than Harry Maguire. With due respect to Steve Bruce, he was a mediocre centre-half at certain times, but he was a great leader. I'm not entirely sure that Harry Maguire is either. But this nature of what's going on with him is destructive and counterproductive. And Gareth aiming barbs at people that are easy, that are faceless, and he can't name because he doesn't know who he's talking about.
Well, he should dig out a couple of articles.
Suggesting pundits and commentators are the reason for this is slightly cowardly because he knows it's the fans. He knows that ultimately it's the Manchester United fans that started this wildfire. The England fans have jumped on it. The Scotland fans think it's funny to do in this particular game. And it's the fans. So he excuses the Scotland fans because he assumes that they've been given a pass for doing that because that's what you expect of away fans anyway. And the reality of it is what he does is go for a soft target and blames the media.
And just quickly, Jim.
The Manchester United fans are the seed of this. I mean, there's one message. Is Danny seriously blaming United fans?
Because England fans are booing their own captain.
You need to take your Liverpool glasses off. Says that Manchester United fan.
It's nothing to do with Liverpool. And let's just say
There's
something.
Another England fan.
Let's just say something else.
Stop telling us we have to like Maguire. He's just not that good.
No, that's fine. But let's just say something else. This has happened.
It's not constructive.
This has happened to many players. I remember Titus Brambles for Ipswich.
Yeah, another average centre half.
Right, he came off the bench. He's been struggling, makes mistakes. He was at Newcastle, Ipswich. I remember playing at Anfield where he came off the bench and Liverpool fans gave him a standing ovation because they wanted him on.
Yeah.
This is the type. John Barnes was my hero.
Yeah.
He got stick from England fans.
He did.
You can't believe that. It's crazy.
He got
isn't
hammered.
it?
Do you remember?
I remember. I know I was
John
going to say John
Barnes.
Barnes.
This was before social media. One of the greatest talents this country's ever seen, getting hammered by England fans.
Yeah.
It happens.
But he has to affect change. Harry Maguire has to take control of his own destiny. And that would mean, in my mind, he's got to leave Manchester United, whether he likes it or he doesn't like it. He's got to accept that part of his career is over. He's got to change the direction of travel, for want of a better expression. He's got to change something around him. And if he continues as he is...
That's all he can change.
That's all he can change.
Then he can just concentrate on his football.
And then he can concentrate on his football. He can rebuild himself in an environment that might actually want him there, because clearly certain sections of the Man United fans don't.
He'd be
the
a good
manager
addition
doesn't want
somewhere,
him.
telling you.
Well, let's throw it out there. I mean, this endless criticism of Harry Maguire. Booed by United fans, a section of. Booed by England fans, a section of. But Manchester United fans, did you start it all off? 03717 223344.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.